Vignettes are a subtle but important adjustment that you can add to your photos in Lightroom, Photoshop, or any other photo editor. The thing about vignettes is that they're not just a useful tool for post-processing, but they're actually quite strong compositional tool as they can help guide the viewer's eyes into the photo and more importantly to the parts of the photo that you want to highlight. Now, the problem with Lightroom's built-in vignette tool is that you're not really flexible. All you can do is add a vignette globally around the photo. Sure, you can adjust the roundness, the midtone, the feather, but you can't tell Lightroom exactly where to darken, where to brighten, and which areas to highlight. Instead, there's a much better way to do this, and I will show you that in a bit, but let's just quickly have a look at what Lightroom's built-in vignetting tool actually does. So if you scroll down to Effects, you can find the Post-Crop Vignetting tool right here. The amount you can adjust the amount to darken or brighten your vignette. Personally, I cannot see many reasons why to add a white vignette, but I tend to go down to about minus 20, 25. Again, like you want to make sure there's a subtle adjustment, not a super visible one. The midpoint allows you to adjust how far into the photo your vignette goes or how far out to the frame. You tend to want to have a fairly soft transition, so I'd say keep the midpoint somewhere around 40 or 50. The roundness you can adjust to make your vignette more rectangular or more circular. Keep this as it is, or if anything, take it a little bit towards the more round part. Feather says how soft your vignette is, just like a graduated ND filter. You have a hard filter, you have a soft filter and a medium filter. You want to avoid having a hard feather like this. I mean, it becomes very obvious that you're adding a vignette. So make sure that you at least leave it around 50 or even more, depending on your photo. The highlight slider is used to basically remove the vignette from any of your highlights. So in this case, increasing the highlights will mean that you're removing the vignette from this brighter part of the photo. So if we just take that to the right, you can see that we're removing this. Let's just make that a little bit more visible here. You can see that we are essentially removing some of the effect from our brighter parts of the sky. Now let's reset everything here. The problem with doing it this way is that you're not flexible in any way. So you can only adjust those sliders, you can only apply one vignette, and you don't really have full control over how and where it is applied. So there's a much better technique that I personally use for the majority of my photos and that I recommend that you implement into your workflow as well. It doesn't actually require much more time than using the post-crop vignetting tools, but you need to understand the use of masks. So we're going to go to our masking interface, open the radial gradient, and make a big circle around the subject that you want to highlight. So in this case, we want the mountain to stand out more, which means we want to darken some of our foreground, some of the sky, but we don't really want to darken this brighter part of the sky on the right side where the sun is naturally coming in. Now, the mask we made right now will affect everything inside the outer circle and into the center of the photo. Obviously, that's not what we want in this case. We want to affect only the outer parts of the photo, so we have to click this invert button. Now you see that this red has moved to the outer sides, and we will only be affecting this, but leaving this central area completely untouched. Now you can see up in this mask section as well that everything that is white on this little thumbnail here is what will be affected by any adjustments. All the black parts are going to be left alone. So again, what this means is that all that is around here, so red in our photo or white in our mask, is being affected by our adjustment. So if we now go to the exposure slider and just gently pull that down, you can see that we're adding a nice subtle vignette around our photo. Now, one crucial thing that I forgot to mention is that you have to make sure that there's a big distance between this line and this inner line. Basically, this is the feather, so you can use this slider to adjust it right here, or you can just pull the inner circle further out or further in. I always recommend having a soft transition because you don't want this to be super visible. Now, right now we pretty much created the same vignette as we did with Lightroom's post-crop vignetting tool. But the beauty with a mask is that A, we can place the center exactly where we want, which in this case is around the mountain, but we can also add or subtract to our mask. So in this case, we can do subtract, click on brush, and then we just paint on this corner here, and we're removing every adjustment from this corner, allowing that natural soft light to still come into our frame instead of actually darkening our highlights. So if we look at that mask again, you see that we are affecting only the outer parts and the bottom part, but we're leaving that right corner completely alone. So if we just exaggerate a little bit here now, you can see that we're not darkening anything in that right side. Now, there's another advantage of using a mask. It is that we can, one, add multiple vignettes or multiple masks, but we can also invert it and brighten the parts we want to emphasize. So let's click on a new mask. Again, go down to radial gradient, but this time we're going to move it over to that right corner. And we're not going to invert it this time. We're going to make sure that we're only actually affecting all the parts that are inside this mask or this selection. So in this case, we can increase our exposure, or we can lift our shadows or highlights or whites, whatever is suiting for your photo. And what we're doing now is essentially brightening up those parts and to help guide the viewer's eye towards the subject that you want to emphasize. So if we turn this mask on and off, you can see that we're just brightening that right corner. If we turn both masks on and off, you can see that we're basically directing light and shifting the light towards the center. Now, let me show you one more example on a different photo. So here we have a really nice golden glow coming in from the left side of our photo. So just as in our previous image, we want to darken parts of the photo, but we don't want to darken this bright part where the sun comes in. If we go down to our post-crop vignetting tool, we can lower the amount to make our vignette. We can increase the midpoint to make it go a little bit further out. And we have to make that feather a lot softer. And we can protect our highlights by increasing the amount here. If we turn this on and off, you can see that we are darkening. We're adding a pretty strong vignette in this case, but we're protecting most of the highlights, although we are darkening some if you turn that on and off. Now let's reset that and instead go into our masks, create a new mask, radial gradient, make that nice and big, move it down to around here because we only want to darken that bottom corner. We invert our mask and we pull that exposure down. We can pull our highlights down and maybe our shadows down a little bit as well. Now, again, we've done just the same as Lightroom's vignetting tool, but we can now go in and subtract, brush, and remove all of that selection from that bright corner up there, still allowing that natural golden light to come into our scene. And we can once more brighten that corner by making a big vignette, and we can rotate it so that we are kind of following that direction of the light. And then we can increase our whites slightly and our shadows slightly, maybe even increase the temperature a little bit. So again, we are just playing with light and we're directing light and using what is already there, but instead of darkening our bright parts, we try to emphasize them by inverting our selection of the vignette. Now, if you like the idea about this, I put together several tools in my Lightroom toolbox that do basically the exact same thing, but allows you to direct light from left, right, at different intensities, as well as shifting focus towards the center and a few other neat vignetting tricks that can help strengthen your composition. So if you like that, please check out the link in the description. And until next time, thank you for watching.